FM. Hello, everybody. You ever get that 5 in the morning itch to talk about Dune? Can't sleep, or maybe you are asleep. You wake up and you're like, you know what? Let's grab out the old camera, the old 5-year-old camera from the cell phone, and let's make a video about Dune. Let's talk some Dune. I'm just itching to talk about Dune, so let's get to it. So, I'm just gonna, on this video, we're going to just skip around to some favorite aspects and parts and things that are interesting before I go more into the history thing. I'm going to go a little bit out of order just to kind of keep it fun. Since it's 5 a.m., my brain's not awake, haven't had a coffee, so just bear with me. So I want to talk about Gideon Prime in the arena. So, okay, let's talk. This one will have some spoilers in it. You've been warned. Spoilers. So, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so Gideon Prime is the planet of the I can never say their names. Harkonnens. There we go. Harkonnens. And yeah, I kind of touched about it in my last video about how their sun is either a white dwarf or a dying sun. Also, you'd have to think about how light, the spectrum of light. So if you know anything about physics and how light works, so maybe their atmosphere and through pollution or through just the way that the light shines through would filter their light into a different sense, that everything would be white and black. So there could be a scientific reason for that besides it being a dying star or it being a white dwarf. It could just be that the spectrum of light on that planet, due to pollution or due to the star, or due to the atmosphere, whatever. I mean, this is future. If you notice that the fireworks that they use on Gideon Prime, when Freyden, after the arena battle, when he's getting ready to go to Arrakis to, take charge, is ink. So there's these ink fireworks, which is so creative, such a brilliant choice of how you could portray futuristic tech that would make sense. And yeah, if you notice that each house, so if it be the Emperor, the Atreides, sorry, still haven't woke up, the Harkonians, God, I can never talk, the Saladar, this is why you don't do movies at 5 in the morning. By the way, each planet, okay, the Spice Guild, which you haven't seen yet, there's other factions you're going to meet. So this is Game of Thrones space. But there's a reason why each different faction, each planet, okay? So if it be the Atreides, if it be the Emperor and his blades, if it be the Harkonnens, if it be the Freemen, they all have a distinct culture. They'll have this distinct, language, history, and everything that is inspired by real world kind of historic things. So you could tell that Frank Herbert, when he was making this movie, was using inspirations from real life history of our planet. Now, why do I come to this conclusion? This is something that I wrote about in college. It wasn't my original idea. It's just something that a lot of people overlook. That the Atreides were bullfighters. They're very militaristic. They come from air and sea power. So yeah, they remind me of the Spanish Empire, maybe like a British Empire, kind of like they are supposed to represent, like, I would say, at the height of the British, or the Spanish, era of, the formalities about, kings, queens, dukes, this whole thing about honor, things like that. Sea power, which was the British, that was their number one advantage back in the 16th century and 17th century and stuff like that. That's how British was able to colonize and inhabit a large section of the world in our own world. If you look now at the Harkonnens, in the chat, if I'm just somebody punch me in the face for keep saying it wrong. Harkonnens, blah. They are more based off a Roman, if you notice, a Roman-based kind of culture. Now you don't see much of it in the movie; you just see little glimpses. But the gladiatorial games are a clear nod to what the Romans did. And also they also too believed in honor. So even though this was a house, I mean, yeah, they did cheat clearly by drugging. They would drug his opponents that he fought, and they obviously did propaganda and stuff like that by having him win, but unfairly. But there is a sense of honor in that house. That's why he takes off his generator. That's why he screams at his shield generator when he realizes Freya that I'm speaking about. So the greatest warrior of their house. So yeah, he is a gladiator. They were celebrating his birthday. He fights 4 or 5. I forget what it is. 3. It was 3 men. One of them was not drugged beforehand. And if you notice that the man that he fought was actually in the first movie. So he's actually in that scene when they're in the ship and the door is opening and Duke Leto turns around and looks at Paul, and Paul looks at him, and the door opens and you first see Arrakis, and you hear this man go, "Atreides!" That's him. So he's some kind of general or some kind of lieutenant or some kind of commander, something like that, who would be skilled. I mean, because House Atreides were known to be, because of Gurney and Duke and all them, or Duncan Holiday, some of the greatest fighters, to the point where the Emperor even feared them. So they were based off of Roman, there was Roman influence into I guess what I'm trying to get at. Now, I would argue that the Emperor was more of a Greek kind of thing. So if you look at them, his flowing robes, they sit around, more of a philosophical kind of, where you're playing what looks like chess, as he's sitting there playing the game that's clearly supposed to represent, chess. You could argue that would be like, Aristotle and Plato and ancient Greece or something like that kind of culture, where the founders of philosophy come from. And I mean, he even says that the emperor says you'll be a formidable empress one day. And a man of few words, but you could tell that his words are measured. That this is a very civilized but capable culture. And I think that the intent of Frank Herbert, the author who wrote this, was when creating these houses to take different parts of different cultures. Now, the freedmen, so the people who live in the desert, which culture do you think that he was taking inspiration from? So you have to think back on his time. Now, guerrilla warfare has been around since forever. No country could just argue, and no country has claim on guerrilla warfare. So it'd be it from the Americans when they used guerrilla warfare to beat the British and win their independence, be it the Vietnamese who've used guerrilla warfare against the French during the French occupation of their country, be it the Germans versus the Roman Empire, so back when Germania, when it was just one large landmass in Europe, full of the Germanic tribes, and Rome, of course, they tried to stretch their empire too far, and they would have these massive military columns that were stretched too thin. They would get ambushed. They would their supply lines would not be able to catch up with their the army. Like, there's so many logistics in war. It's kind of like how Napoleon lost in Russia. It's how It's how the Germans lost in World War II. The logistics of war, is you have to have supplies, a constant need of supplies to be able to feed and shelter and arm your army. And I'm going off topic, but yeah, I just wanted to make that point that I find very interesting. So the guerrilla warfare, so the guerrilla fighters of the Freeman, what they remind me of, I mean, yeah, you could even argue the what were they called, the Mujahideen, the ones that fought the USSR, in Afghanistan, the Mujahid. Forgive me, I screw them anyways. I don't even want to say their names. But for a little cultural lesson back, during the Soviet invasion. So yeah, Afghanistan is another. So there was another, person who was disagreed with me about, countries that have never been conquered, or when I said that statement about there being about five, roughly five, and you could argue that it's a subjective term, but Afghanistan is one of them. It is known as the graveyard of empires. So many empires have come, and they've never been able to take it, and Afghanistan is one of them. Russia is one of them. Vietnam is one of them. America is one of them. So, I mean, there's four right there, and I forget what the fifth one is. You could argue there's a few others, but point being is that's what I meant when I was talking about that. But yeah, during the Soviet, not when I say the Soviet, I'm talking about when Russia was the USSR. So when it was the Soviet Union, not what it is today. When they invaded into Afghanistan, they were beaten. They had all these tanks and these helicopters, and it was the same story of the American Vietnam War, the same story of the American Afghanistan War, same story of the French, versus the Japanese army versus the samurai. I mean, there's always or the European settlers versus the Native Americans. There's always a culture with a technological advantage when it comes to war that will lose despite having superior firepower, despite having air supremacy, despite having tanks and all this technology. But yeah, if you know the land, if you're fighting for your land that you've had for centuries, if you're fighting for something more, I mean, you got to think about it. So let's think about war. Okay, I'm gonna give you a little thought nugget about war. Okay, this is something you got to realize about war. You got two sides. Okay, you got one side. You generally two sides. Okay, stupid statement, but war has two sides. You have the side that's attacking, you have the side that's defending. Generally, you'll have one side that is doing it because their government is telling them to. For example, let's just use Germany in World War II. So, the German army. I'm not talking about the bad. I'm just talking about the army itself. Okay, the ones that invaded Poland. The ones that invented the Blitzkrieg, which was lightning war. It means German for lightning war, which was revolutionary for their time. Be it to, just the Russian soldiers that were told, hey, yeah, go invade Afghanistan. Do you think these guys wanted to do this? Or America, okay? Now America has a little bit of skin in the game. Yes, and kind of not, because of what happened to our country with the attacks, but on September 11th. But I don't want to go into that. I don't want to talk geopolitics. I've been in the military myself, so I'm always respectful to my brothers and sisters that and f a certain president who did what he did and left people behind. I don't care. I don't care if you love. I don't care about anything else, but f him for leaving behind. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna keep this tuned. So yeah, you'll have one side that is fighting because they're told, and one side that's fighting because it's either a religious thing for them. which in Dune, it is. The Freemen believe that there's going to be this great prophet that delivers them to paradise. Or, the Vietnamese fighting for their land because they want to have their independence. And, yeah, they don't want to live under French occupation. Or, or Americans fighting against the British because, we will not be taxed, no taxation without representation. So we told the king to go F himself, pretty much. So, yeah, people always ask about American history and about why Americans are very confrontational. It's because that's how our nation was born. We are a country of freemen. We're like the freemen. We're a country of like F you. Like we don't conform. We don't bend the knee. We don't give away our freedoms. We don't give away our guns for safety. We're not a bunch of pansies sitting here worried about the world. I mean, Americans are a country just like the freemen. I see a lot of freemen in them. Just very proud. Um, Back, I'm talking about early Americans, 1776. Now we're a technological superpower, a military superpower. But we beat the British, the largest, most powerful army and gained our independence. And we did it by, instead of lining up, standing in a line and shooting at each other, taking turns firing at each other, which was standard practice for that time. No, we would ambush them. We would do unconventional warfare. That's what the whole Minuteman thing is. That's why, this whole idea of patriot and don't tread on me is. And yeah, you ever heard of the Boston Tea Party? So yeah, King George and sent all this, so he was taxing Americans, right? So they were British people at the time. So you had all these British who went to the New World